This week on the Post Call podcast, a bit of a celebrity guest and a literal celebrity guest, someone that consults in Hollywood to make sure that what you see on TV and film medically is accurate. Dr. Ashley Alker is here. She's going to talk about it. She was actually at an awards dinner for this kind of thing when I interviewed her. It was really cool. We're also going to finally get into the Elizabeth Warren healthcare plan and at least talk about why some physicians are not exactly pumped about the plan. We are also going to preview a special Thanksgiving episode that we have coming up next week. And I'm joined now, as I always am, by Dr. Emmy Okamoto, who said, I can do multiple podcast recordings at one time. I'm down for whatever.
Yeah. Today's the day off, so it's a great day.
I remember you telling me that you get a few of those in a row, right?
Yeah, Cambodia has like 20-something national holidays. It's great.
Man, we should, I'm not saying we should copycat, but we should copycat that.
Oh, yeah. Today I got to watch someone cutting down a banana tree outside my house.
Oh, how was that?
It's good. It's really easy. It's not like that firm. It's kind of like a stalk of fronds of leaves with like 50 bananas. Tiny ones. Yep.
Have you eaten any of those?
Yeah. Cue that banana song by Harry Belafonte or something.
Oh, classy, of course. Well, welcome to the Post Call Podcast. I am Nick Andrews. I'm joined by Emmy Okamoto, MD, and today we got a big show. Going to be talking about Hollywood and make fun of people, TV shows that got it wrong. But I wanted to start today with Elizabeth Warren, who is seeking the Democratic nomination for President of the United States, which will be decided in the calendar year 2020. She released a plan for Medicare-for-all. Medicare-for-all obviously has been something that has been talked about, I don't know, must be for at least 20 years now. In Medicare-for-all, one of the things that was mentioned in her plan was that specialists would receive Medicare, I believe Medicare level reimbursement. So essentially less money for higher specialties. Not a lot of physicians, or some physicians on Twitter, according to the Medscape article that we're reading, didn't love that. And so it's time to talk about why. So Emmy, what did you think about what we read in the Medscape articles?
Yeah, the article is that many doctors feel angry and undervalued because there are, it looks like significant cuts that would come to pay. And it's hard. It's hard to take people, especially people who have debt, and say you're going to be paid less. So I agree with their sentiments. I think it does need to be structured into larger, how do we restructure debt and make becoming a physician less costly if our current pay is not sustainable.
Right.
So.
And it's tough because it's there are going to be some people who only get the burden of this because they can't retroactively make med school cheaper, even if debt is forgiven for those that are coming next. So, I mean, it's very much you want to be part of the team, but you also want to make sure that you're taken care of, especially because, you're going into this to do the thing you wanted to do. You have certain plans, and if there's a huge disparity in pay, depending on what your specialty is, or your subspecialty or whatever, you can see how this would rub people the wrong way. However, every physician I speak to essentially agrees that Medicare-for-all is the end game here, but the conversation gets bogged down in where to start, and I think that's sort of what we're seeing here.
Well, probably not every physician, but you speak to.
Well, that's who I've spoken to. And
liberal Philadelphia physicians.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to any who have really disagreed, but I know that they're out there, and I need to do a better job finding them for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's just like, the system is so broken that whatever major restructuring happens, there will be some people who suffer. Yeah, but I was just looking up the average out-of-pocket costs that a family pays in a year, and the U.S. median is $3,700. So we spend all this time talking about the insurance companies and the physicians and the immediate players, but I think sometimes we forget that the average U.S. household is just shelling out money.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's true. So I've and I think I've talked about it on the show. I'm having my second endothelial cell transplant on my left eye now. We're gonna get some donor endothelial cells so I can see the world the way it is. And it's very exciting. And the cost of this, like, I mean, I'll be on immunosuppressant topical drops for the rest of my life, and those are crazy expensive. This is the reality of where I'm at. And I understand that, there are so many moving parts here. What am I supposed to do? Not get the surgery, and then I have to take the steroids. Like, that's just how it's got to be. The bummer is that I believe that medicine as a business, or aspects of medicine as a business, can be beneficial, but it can't be this crazy. And I think that's what the problem is.
Yeah, like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Yeah.
Forever.
So
it's going to be, this is my reality. So yeah, I mean, it's starting to happen now. I think that people are going to get mad because if you dip into someone else's wallet, they're going to be mad, and you have every right to feel that way. But I think that this is the first time there's been a plan on the table, and she's pulling adequately most places. So we're going to have this conversation on a national stage for the first time ever, really. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And if anybody has any thoughts, DM me, email me. It's podcast@mdedge.com. You can find both of those in the show notes. We'd love to talk about it because it's happening on the national stage. So that's what this show is for. Something else I wanted to talk about. Always like to get into physician wellness and healthcare wellness. I think that after a long day, it's really easy to be addicted to binging your favorite TV shows. Go figure. It's bad for your sleeping habits. And this is coming from MDedge. It says 80% of people might be losing sleep because they're binging. And my first reaction was, that seems kind of low.
Well, it was 88% admitted they've lost sleep for having that one extra episode.
I know.
Yeah. And 95% of people in our age demographic, 18 to 44, which is funny because they started off saying, like, according to a survey, what's the most important thing for people? Number one is family, and number two is sleep.
Is that true? I don't think it's true.
But then you have Netflix in front of you and you're like, oh, it's autoplay. It takes so much energy to hit the pause button.
I know. And like, I can't go to, it's a weird addictive thing. And I'm a fan of the work of David Foster Wallace. I know that he had obvious issues, but that we don't really need to get into. But in Infinite Jest, he predicted, like, hey, binge watching is going to be a problem. People are going to get addicted to entertainment because it's so good. What have you binged, like, at 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning? Like, damn, I kind of just lost an entire day of sleep, but it was kind of worth it.
Yeah.
I caught myself on a Mad Men binge, Entourage, and recently Succession. That's the new binge thing. Have you ever stayed up late doing that by yourself?
I did Orange is the New Black way back when.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that have been what, med school for you probably?
Yeah, ish, or residency. Yep. Yeah, there were some good ones.
This is all coming on as we record. This is the first day that the Disney Plus streaming service is available worldwide, and there have been some glitches, but it also coincides with a couple million children not having school today from a huge snowstorm in the Midwest. So Disney binging is happening.
Yeah, wow. And I will say, I love this segment that we pulled this from, Living on the MDedge.
Living on the MDedge, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff here. If you look at the column, I'm just reading this as I'm going through the article. University of Wyoming researchers say that there is hope for those who sleep in the sound world of streaming. Krispy Kreme must plan ahead to tame the temptation. So it means that if you plan, you can do it. But if you don't, and you're just holding your phone over your face in bed, you're probably going to stay up to 4 o'clock in the morning watching crap.
Yes.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
So you can find a link to Live It on the MDedge in the podcast notes. Okay, so we're going to get into the introduction of our guest, and we're going to do it early because the guest not only is super fascinating and the interview was excellent, but in our introduction, we get to make fun of people on TV who got medicine wrong. And it's not mean, I don't want to sound mean, but it's just so incorrect that you can't help but laugh. So we're going to do this thing. So we're recording our video now, and what I want to do, and she's already seen it, Emmy's already seen it, I just want her to walk us through what the hell we're looking at on our screens, and how could they have possibly gotten it this wrong? That's what I want to know. So, if I can pull it up here. When you first saw this clip that I'm about to show you, what did you think?
Let's see, which one? There were two great ones.
Oh, there were two. Do you want to do them both? We can totally do them both.
let's see. Oh, yes, that one. Yes.
So
I
okay,
I
so
guess
walk us
this
through
was
what
the
we're
end
looking
of
at.
the blacklist. Yeah. Well, I hear for context that they're cutting in to insert uh, a, a tube into
Yes, there's a
hemothorax. So
hemothorax.
they make the incision and they are inserting in an endotracheal tube
So good
into her
start.
pleural cavity. It's like that looks very familiar and a very interesting thing to shove in.
Mm-hmm.
After which they are attaching, the breathing bag that they attach to the endotracheal tube to presumably pump out blood. Well,
Oh,
that's the only thing they attach. If you
so
insert
there's
an
the blood.
endotracheal,
Oh.
yep, you're going to put on the breathing bag instead of the bag for, the.
Man, is that how you do a pneumothorax? Just out of curiosity, is that a no?
Yeah, just kind of see what you have. If there's a tube, just
Mhm.
put it in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what that's used for, right? That's a blood collector, not an airbag. Great.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah,
just
yeah.
want to make
Kind
sure.
of suction it out slowly.
The reason we're making fun of this, I get on my high horse about this because I believe that accuracy and telling the truth isn't that hard, and we should try to stick to it. And obviously, these shows are working on a week-to-week schedule and blah, blah, blah. They cut corners. But if you know what's going on in medicine or otherwise, you're like, I literally can't take any of this seriously now because you're living in a fantasy world. And so when you watch TV and they get it wrong, and it's a part of your vocation, what's your reaction?
It's just kind of like disappointment, like
Oh, no.
that's so wrong. And I turn to whoever I'm with. I'm like, oh gosh, this is all the reasons that's wrong. And I become very, annoying and correcting everything.
Does it kind of like make you mad? You possibly like, do you see that? That's garbage.
Yeah, let me tell you how it is.
Yes.
Yeah. And everyone's like, I'm just trying to watch the show, Emmy. This is fine. It's not a big deal.
But it is, though, to me, because I think that there is tremendous public health damage that can be done if people think it is a certain way. Like, there is not an opioid addict with a limp in central New Jersey that knows what's wrong with every single person in the world. That guy isn't real.
In particular, a lot of people say for the success rate of CPR is a lot higher on TV than it is in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have these like end of life conversations with people and are trying to discuss the futility often of CPR in particular patients, they're like, oh, but it works. I saw on TV. Why wouldn't I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't see kind of the uglier side that a lot of physicians see day in, day out.
Right, the rates aren't the same. We see this with other parts of TV, like everybody on juries now. Apparently, prosecutors have a tough time getting convictions because the jurors don't understand how DNA works and what's a fact, because in CSI, there's DNA and semen on everything, and then like, oh, there's the guy that did it. No,
yeah,
that's not how the procedure works. But I mean, we got to give credit where credit is due, because there are a bunch of shows that get it right, and this is where Dr. Alker, she attended this award show. She consults to make sure these kind of shows and movies get it right. So these are the shows that were nominated for. This is called the Sentinel Award, and it is for scientific and medical accuracy. So some good stuff on here.
But not only that, but it features storylines that shine a light on a range of health and social topics, including criminal justice, recovery, addiction, maternal health, HIV/AIDS, mental health, existential threats of nuclear safety, and climate change.
Which is so important to me, because like you flirt often with sacrificing facts for the story, which is really easy. But if you work within the parameters of what it's actually like for people, I think you can really connect. And if people can trust that that's true, then it can go a long way. So they got into some really good stuff. These shows a lot of them were really popular. You're going to see them come award season. Chernobyl, nuclear safety, as you alluded to, with like the existential threat of what happened in Chernobyl. Euphoria was nominated for addiction recovery. That's one that I think is often wrong in popular stories. The Bold Type was just ABC Family. ABC Family they are really good at being inclusive and accurate about stuff. They were the first TV show ever to do a show completely in sign language, and they're really great about this. And the topic that they makes total sense for their audience was abortion. That show is called The Bold Type. Mom on CBS, Addiction and Recovery. Grace and Frankie, which is an underrated show on Netflix. Big fan of that one. That's about older adults and aging. Are you familiar with that show?
I'm not.
So Jane Fonda and I forget the other woman's name, Lily Tomlin.
Fonda.
Yes, they're great. So they've been married. They hate each other, but their husbands were partners and they love each other. Well, it turns out they actually love each other. And after 30 or 40 years of marriage, the husbands are like, "We're leaving you because we're gonna get married. We've been gay this whole time." So they're coming out of the closet. And now Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin are like, "Well, what the hell do we do now?" So that's about getting older and all that kind of stuff. It's really great. It's a great show. Grey's Anatomy. How about that? Sexual assault. They do a pretty good job of intense issues as well. Madam Secretary is nominated. When They See Us for criminal justice. Empire is nominated for HIV and AIDS. The Resident on Fox, which in the first 45 seconds of that show is like the inaccuracy of this is just like, I LOL. But they did get mental health right in the episode, if not now, when. One Day at a Time, which is on Netflix for mental health, and Mental Health for This Is Us, which is a tearjerker if you've ever seen it. It's really tough to get through an episode. So those are some shows that got things right. Anything, you familiar with any of those shows? What do you watch?
Yeah, I did This Is Us, and they have the topic of Toby and the mental health, and it's, a lot of times it's just brushed over in one or two episodes. Something gets you down, you get better, but that was kind of like a running stream that they were able to put through a longer time and really show the gravity of the situation in a better way. I've seen it than other shows.
Off the top of your head, do you have any examples of like times you watched a movie or TV show and they got it right or they got it wrong and it like really stood out to you? I have one for you.
Yeah,
that might be close to us. Is that I think Silver Linings Playbook was really good for bipolar disorder and grief and things. I think that the accuracy of Bradley Cooper's character was really. It was an accurate depiction of what I at least understand to be bipolar.
Yeah, that was good. There was also one, what was called like The Other Sister or something? No. Yeah, maybe. Anyways, yeah, a lot of the mental health ones, particularly the movies that focus on one character, I think will have a lot of good research behind it. Gosh, I'm thinking, what was that movie? I'll think of it. I'll let you know.
We'll stay tuned for
with
next
Natalie
week.
Portman.
For mental health, the Black Swan.
Wasn't she something in? No.
The other Bolin girl? No, that can't be the one.
Yeah,
I'm sure she was. I'm not that I'm a huge fan, but I'm a huge fan of Natalie Portman. She is so impressive, and she's so good.
Yes.
We'll find that Natalie Portman movie. I'm sure I've seen it. I'm 100% sure. I have to.
I got the actress wrong.
It could be Rooney Mara, I suppose. People get them confused all the time. Okay, so Dr. Ashley Alker, she consults for these people. She also is a physician. She is trying to bridge the gap, like a lot of the guests that we have, between what doctors do and how things are represented and communicated in to patients and into lay media. She also gives TEDx talks about how to discuss end of life and how to like change the conversation with patients and their families at the end. It was a traumatic experience for her, and she gets into that a little bit. She also gets into specific ways that she helped TV shows. I think we talked about it last time. She said that one of the best ways that she was able to consult was to tell them, hey, adrenaline won't wake this patient up. It's Narcan, and actually we need to have a conversation about ethics, and that happened in The Purge. So we got it right in The Purge. Narcan works in The Purge. So even if it's a shameless slasher flick, you can get it right.
Great.
I'm sure that you've watched a bunch. Yeah, I bet you've watched a bunch of horror movies. You seem like a horror person.
Oh gosh, no way. Oh, I like run and hide in the closet.
No, you're not one of those people. Halloween for me is everybody goes to sleep, and I get to watch a scary movie by myself with like a glass of bourbon. I love it.
Oh gosh. Ooh.
I know. I'm all about
it. Sounds like my
nightmare. Well, Emmy, thanks for joining us. Coming up next, Dr. Ashley Alker on the Post Call Podcast. Next time, we're going to have a Thanksgiving special episode about how to have Thanksgiving in the hospital and what to do if you're a physician or a resident. Emmy, thanks for coming.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Post Call Podcast. I am Nick Andrews, and I'm joined by someone, as I just mentioned, that I've been wanting to have on for a long time. It's Dr. Ashley Alker. She consults for TV. Well, you do a bunch of stuff, but first, my first bone to pick with you is, are you the person I can yell at every time there's something inaccurate on TV regarding medicine?
Oh God, I hope not. 'Cause there's a lot of that.
Yes,
I get yelled at a lot.
Yes, I saw something on Twitter today. Like, oh, I didn't know that's how chest tubes worked. Interesting. Learned a lot today.
Yeah, I actually saw that same thing.
Yeah.
And then Esther retweeted it, so I'm sure it'll pick up traction soon now. But yeah, the NBC's The Blacklist had a scene where they inserted an ET tube as a chest tube, which the wilderness medicine people are like, oh, that might happen. But then they connected an ambu bag to it and then lost all of us.
Yeah.
Like, nope, that's bad medicine.
Yeah, that is terror. Yeah, like, it's okay. They're just a multi-billion-dollar company. No worries. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Accuracy, schmaccuracy. No worries. So I wanted to talk to you because one of the interesting things that you do is consult for TV and tell people in movies like what is accurate and what is and what isn't. And so just tell me how you got into that and how that happened and what that's like.
Yeah. So when I first started in it, I spoke to someone who was kind of working in it or had worked in it before as kind of a side gig. He had a friend who does it full time and actually doesn't work in medicine anymore. And then after that connection, it was really just referral based. And also I go to a lot of film festivals. Film and television are something I really enjoy and have always enjoyed. So I will go to film festivals. I'll meet writers, producers. I'll hand out my card and kind of be like, if you ever have something you're working on and you need some help, I'm available at how to contact me. And then a lot of times, unfortunately, I do work for free. And that's kind of how the majority of it starts out. And then eventually, if you get picked up to work on a particular show or your writing gets made into a show, that's different. That's kind of like Lisa Saunders style with her New York column Diagnosis. They created the show House off of that, and she now has a Netflix special as well called Diagnosis, which is about crowdsourcing for diagnoses that are very rare. And obviously she gets paid for all of that. But yeah, there are some where if I'm getting paid, I'll get paid to do like development, et cetera. But most of it I do for free as a public health initiative. And also just so doctors' brains don't explode when they're watching television and they see, an ambu bag used with a fake chest tube.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting. This is a foray that's particularly of interest to me. My background is in creative fiction. I have a local agent in Philly. I do some acting on the side. No big deal.
That's awesome.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
So fun.
Mostly it's just because my voice sounds like this and I can put people to sleep on commercials.
It's a great voice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So this is particularly interesting to me because I advocate for accuracy. There's no reason not to just tell the truth. I find it offensive when things are set in Russia and they don't have Russian accents. And anytime you see anything in courtroom dramas or police procedurals or medical procedurals that aren't at least arguably accurate, I feel like, you could have taken the time to do that. So is that something that you feel as well? You said you want to try to prevent people's brains from exploding when they watch it. And is that what you get out of it?
Well, there's two things there, right? The first thing is that you're right. How offended are you when CIA analyst Jack Ryan doesn't know how to turn on a computer? When cops don't read Miranda rights or they read the wrong rights. Right. That's not good writing. It's not good television. And the same goes for medicine. I take it kind of personally when writers and producers don't take time to really think about the intelligence of their viewers and try and create accuracy. And then beyond that, in medicine, it's so important because, excuse me, in medicine, it's so important because this is a public health opportunity. It's not how we educate people necessarily, but if you see accurate CPR on television, opposed to seeing someone, doing like 2-finger compressions on the esophagus or something, you're so much more likely to do things correctly. And I mean, yes, I want you to go to a CPR class. That is the, American Heart Association preferred way to learn CPR. But why don't we show people, correct expectations? And it also sometimes hurts the doctor-patient relationship when they show doctors being callous or, money mongering and all of these things where they create personas for individuals as well. And that can be dangerous. So I think it's something that, everyone who is in a particular type of field, whether it's like a cop or, you know, the CIA or medicine, you know, we take the artistic reflection of us that you see on television, we take that personally.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that we want to be proud of. So I hope that, you know, the work that I do kind of helps to build a better image for physicians and also kind of reflects who we actually are and what we actually do, for both a public health reason and also because, you know, don't use the ambu bag on a chest tube. It's just bad writing.
Yeah, and like the thing that really upsets me, just as a person, I'm a like lay person in medical media. You could have Googled that. You know, it would have taken a little long. It would have taken longer, but you could have figured out the appropriate way to do that and made a phone call and direct message someone, and you could have got that done. Which is where I feel like people like you can really help out. Just because, like you said, it's not quite the same thing as a high level scientist being inaccurately represented when the public health concerns really impact everyone. Perhaps it would be more accurate to have the ED physician trying to get a hold of a family member to make a really tough decision at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Excuse me, I have a little frog in my throat this morning. Bad timing. Yeah, so that's definitely true. And I also think that, you know, especially in LA, they're surrounded by, you know, emergency medicine doctors. You know, if you're not going to reach out to me, reach out to USC or, you know, UCLA. You know, we're all around and we want to help. So I think that it's something that I'm trying to figure out how to make it more available for them and just easier.
Yeah.
So that's my hope.
Well, and I really appreciate that because I'm one of the people that it does drive me nuts. Every single aspect. Sports are wrong. Medicine is wrong. There's no reason not to get it right. But one thing that you've been trying to accurately represent for a while is your experiences with death. Just a little bit of background. You live near a UN green zone. I'm reading this directly off your website. This is not copyright infringement. Where you worked for the unit of rehabilitation of the victims of torture, which I would imagine would put you on the front lines of some really intense things to process. And you give this talk about facing death. You have a children's book about death. So tell me what you've learned and how you found your voice in this really macabre situation for the average person.
Yeah, so I think death is something that our society doesn't talk about a lot and maybe purposefully. And it's something that I experience, unfortunately, very often at work. Most emergency medicine doctors are kind of faced with this, and then also in my personal life. So I lived in Cyprus, in the capital city of Cyprus. It's Lefkosia or Nicosia, and it is the last UN green zone capital divided city in the world. So kind of like Berlin was. And it was really interesting living there. It was a very interesting perspective, and I made a lot of friends on both sides of the green zone. So it was interesting to meet these people and kind of see what they had gone through. And then also working at the unit for the rehabilitation of victims of torture. Most of the people I was meeting were coming out of the Middle East and North Africa. And it was at a time when people weren't particularly friendly toward Americans. So my interactions with them taught me a lot. And I came back to the US kind of interested in kind of the darker aspects of life that we don't really talk about. And so then that continued. And when I was in medicine, and I was like, all we kind of talk about is, you know, how to use science to make people better. And we kind of shy away from like the emotional aspects of it, especially when medicine falls short and can't do anything anymore for these patients. And I unfortunately have lost like a lot of my family, including my mother, at a very untimely, you know, younger age. And so that affected me a lot. And I kind of went out and tried to find ways to talk to people about end-of-life care. Because I found, especially working in the ICU, it wasn't something we were doing. We were kind of like, this is how we can continue to keep this body alive when the individual might not necessarily be there anymore.
Sure.
So I gave a TEDx talk at UCSD about it. And really, my conversations are more with the public about death and kind of my perspective as a physician and how I want to make sure that we're communicating with them better. You know, and when my mom died, there was, you know, a decision had to be made to withdraw life support from her as well. And we knew her wishes. She made them very clear. And so when the time came, that decision was a little bit easier because it wasn't our decision. It was her decision, and we were protecting her and fulfilling her wishes. So that's one message that I really try and get out there, is that people should have end of life care discussions with their family members and the people that they love. And then my children's book, I actually wrote that book for the possibility of someday having kids, and my sister someday having kids. And it was really about my mom, and just kind of a way to explain to children who people are who are no longer here, when they don't really have an idea of like object permanence or anything, really constructive. They haven't really understood the idea of death yet. And so I wrote that book, and then I thought, maybe other people can use this too. So I published it, and it's available on Amazon. It's called Goodnight, Grandma Angel. And all of the artwork in the book is my mom's. So she was a painter. So
wow.
I had her as the illustrator of the book.
That's really nice. I really like that.
Thanks. Yeah, it was special. Still is.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we're going to link to that in the show notes if you would like to take a look and buy it on Amazon.com. You can find that in the show notes. It's interesting that you bring up the advanced directive stuff. Actually, that was my quote-unquote big break into acting. My first big paid gig was something that was really amazing experience as an artist, but really important work, where it was just a public service announcement for how quickly people between the ages of, say, 25 and 45 can be faced with that exact decision, and how when you are young and free and all that stuff, you don't really want to think about that. There's, you're almost sort of invincible, but without making those things clear, you can really put your loved ones in a really tough, weird spot. So I think that it's such an important message. And this is something that you've been doing with your career, is taking things that you see at the front lines of medicine and healthcare and kind of illustrating it to the public in a very profound and simple to digest way. So my question now is, between what you're doing in popular culture and this message with death, what's next for you? What do the next 5 to 10 years look like with your bridge between medicine and the public?
Yeah, that's, I always try and think where I want to be in 5 to 10 years. And this time I think it's tough, right? Because I just graduated residency. And I mean, as many of my co-residents around the country can attest, a lot of the next 5 years is just learning how to be an emergency physician on your own, because it's different than residency. And nobody really tells you that. So a lot of it is just being the best doctor I can be, and really learning to connect with just my patients now. They're my responsibility, and that I love. So a lot of it is just going to be medicine, I think. Also working on my student loans. And then as far as the consulting goes, I'm really trying to expand and bring other physicians into it too, because there's times when I'll get consults and I'll be like, I don't really know much about this aspect of orthopedic surgery. Let me refer you to a friend of mine, and who I know is a great orthopedic surgeon, and he or she can really help you kind of further elucidate this for the public. So maybe, eventually, maybe not in 5 years, maybe in 10, but establishing like a corporation or a nonprofit that kind of does this work. I work with a group that does something similar, and they do a great job, but there's always room for people to kind of expand and do more. So maybe something along those lines. And actually I moved back to DC to kind of be more involved in policy again. So hopefully kind of working on that as well, because being so close to DC in Northern Virginia is great. And I actually, I got to work with Congressman Ruiz as a healthcare policy fellow during residency. And I hope to kind of work with his office again and get back into the policy side of things. But,
and how could you not, if you're in DC, how could you not want to be a part of that?
Yeah, one of the big reasons for leaving California was to kind of jump back into the policy sides of things. So I hope to kind of be involved with that in our national organizations. AAEM and ASAP are kind of the emergency medicine organizations I've been involved with that I really enjoy. And then also the AMA. So kind of doing that kind of, work. And then also on the side, kind of trying to create an organization for more people to help with, consulting in different television shows, et cetera. And I'm actually in California right now, which I told you earlier, but I'm here for something called the Sentinel Awards, which is an awards show that basically acknowledges good healthcare and public health initiatives on television. So people care about this. It's getting traction.
Oh,
so that's good.
That is very exciting. So you mentioned that you were back in California. You moved back to DC. So let's get some biographical information. Where did you go to high school, undergrad, grad? Where did you do your residency, and just anything else about your first 25 years of life that you want to fill us in on?
Okay, so let's see. I grew up in San Diego, which was wonderful, especially when my parents paying for me to live here.
Yes, I bet.
It's a little pricey, but it was great. I went to Scripps Ranch High School with a couple other people who are really big names. Not that I'm a big name, but some people that are on television. Kyle Mooney is on Saturday Night Live. He was like a year older than me, and one of the main guys from the TV show The OC was also at my high school. So it was a fun high school. People did really interesting things. There were actually a lot of people who went into the arts, which was really neat. And then I went to undergrad at the University of California, Santa Barbara, where I played for the Division I women's water polo team. And kind of just lived the jock life and had a good time in college and got to do some really amazing, science. I thought I was going to be a marine biologist, but that didn't work out. And then I went to grad school. It was through Harvard School of Public Health, but I was at an institute in Cyprus. And then after that, I was at, I took some time off and worked, and then I went to medical school, and I went to George Washington, and then back to San Diego for residency, and now I'm back to the East Coast again. So a lot of bumping around the country and the world.
I see that. I don't do this on purpose, but you're, I think, the third or fourth Division I athlete I've had on the show, just out of happenstance. So weird.
Yeah, we have this thing in common where we like to do difficult things, I think. So we're like, oh, medicine looks hard. Let's do that.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I talk to Division I athletes who are now doctors, I find that the transition isn't as difficult. I someone who comes from a bit of a sports background in journalism and media, there are so many similarities with the militarization and the put your nose down and work and no individual opinions. There's only group opinions and stuff. It's really, it seems like it makes the transition better.
Yeah, it's all the team. I totally agree. I think it's a very similar lifestyle too. You kind of, sports, 3 times a day you have practices in college, which is crazy. It's like when you have time to practice 3 times a day. And also people from obviously military backgrounds, going into medicine, I think is a lot easier for them because they kind of understand the mentality.
Yes, 100%. I've said the same thing many times. Interesting side note. A really big person in water polo came from my hometown, which is weird because I'm from Wyoming.
What's her name?
Heather Moody. She's the national team coach, and she was a silver and bronze medalist in the early 2000s. So maybe ahead of your time a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, but the name sounds somewhat familiar. I actually was lucky enough growing up in San Diego that I got to play with most of the U.S. Olympic team. Mm-hmm. I mean, during the time when I was that age range.
Sure. She was the only person not from California on the Olympic teams when she went. So that makes sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I thought that maybe if I mentioned her name, maybe you might have heard of her. Just there's a street named after her in my little hometown in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming.
Oh, that is great. I love when women athletes get the recognition they deserve, because I feel like, we play at such a high level, and then they don't really get the same, airtime as a lot of male athletes. So that's amazing that they took the time to honor, what she did.
Yeah. And I say that, I agree for the most part. I will say that if there's champions are always greeted with fanfare, which I think is the case. She's the only athlete in my hometown with any sort of municipal recognition, because she's an Olympian and she's the only one.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. They represent us.
Yeah, so I remember being 10. Yeah, exactly. I remember being 10 and everybody staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning to watch her, and I think it was in Japan at the time. It's crazy.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, cool. Thanks for that. I really appreciate that. I'm going to let all of my friends know that they can just listen to us talk about Heather Moody. They'll be really excited. So we asked about what you're going to do in the future. You're becoming a young attending and trying to work on your student loans. In your personal life, because EM is so difficult, what do you do to kind of relieve stress or blow some steam off, or kind of just stick to yourself? What do you do to recenter or get right for the next time you need to go to work?
I love writing. I spend a lot of time writing. I kind of always have since I was a little kid. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but I love doing it. And it really helps. It helps me kind of connect to people. So that's kind of what I do in my free time. A lot of like creative writing, and I'll do a lot of writing about medicine because I think that it's an easier thing for me to talk about, and it's more of a unique perspective sometimes for readers. So yeah, I spend a lot of time doing that. And just working out.
Yeah.
Being an athlete, I'm still really into fitness.
Yeah,
so
taking
those
care
are
of
the big
yourself.
things.
Sure. So the last question is, what TV shows, just as a cool question, have you worked on, and what was the coolest thing you contributed to the final product?
Ooh, that is a good question. So TV shows I've worked on. So ABC has one called Station 19. I've done Netflix. I did the Babysitters Club for Netflix.
Cool.
They had one about diabetes. I did Disney was really fun to work with. I did one of their television shows. It's called Sydney to the Max. It's a kids show. I worked on one episode of The Resident on Fox. And then probably one of the biggest ones I worked on was I did some work for The Act on Hulu, which actually won some Emmys. So that was neat. They were an Emmy-nominated show.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago Med and a couple other ones. But the coolest thing that I've contributed. So I worked on one show, and this one's going to seem kind of out there because it's not a medical show, but they have medical scenes in it, which I really appreciate when non-medical shows still take the time to get accurate medical scenes. So I worked on a show called The Purge,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously not medical. It's like a horror show. And they had some scenes where they had an actor who was portraying an emergency medicine doctor. And this is out now, so I can talk about it. And this actor basically was bringing someone kind of back to